What's up, guys? Welcome to a new day. I'm Stephanie Ryder, and this is the 365 Shares podcast. It's February 12th, 2024, and today's topic is adult-child defined. The Big Red Book says an adult child is someone whose actions and decisions as an adult are guided by childhood experiences grounded in self-doubt or fear. At my first ACA meeting, which was years ago, I went with an ex because I thought he needed it. Obviously, we both needed it, but I went to a few meetings with him because I thought it would fix our relationship. But I really was more focused on him going than me. Obviously, that relationship didn't work out. But at the first meeting that I went to, it was so strange to hear everyone go around the room and introduce themselves and say, "Hi, my name is X, and I'm an adult child." Or, "Hi, my name is X, ACA." It took me a long time to get comfortable with announcing myself that way. And for a while, I would just say, "Hi, I'm Steph." Or then I would say, "I'm Steph, ACA." But now I try to make an effort to say adult child because it's just something that felt really uncomfortable and shameful and not really how I wanted to be seen. Like I still really cared how the people in ACA saw me. And I think that's something that prevents a lot of people from starting to go and continuing to go is that we all have this mask that we wear in the world. And we don't want to go somewhere vulnerable. We don't want anyone to see the real us. We don't want to label ourselves as something that we don't want to be. And nobody wants to be an adult child. It's like saying, "I'm Steph and I'm a big baby." Like nobody wants to be that. So I try to say, "I'm Steph, adult child," just for my own self and my growth, because in general in ACA, I think we try to move toward things that are uncomfortable. We say if we didn't feel like going to a meeting that day, that's when you need to go. If you didn't want to share, that's when you need to share. So I try to say, "I'm Steph, adult child." And the more I say it, the less uncomfortable it gets. Today is Monday, and I usually go to meetings on Monday nights. I am the group service representative for the Monday meetings. And tonight was a good meeting. There were, I think, 5 new people. There were 13 people total, and 5 of them were new. And we haven't had a new person in a while, like maybe a few months, except for occasionally here and there. So it was really cool to have 5 new people there. Statistically, maybe 2 of them will keep coming back consistently. But, if one person comes or 4 people keep coming, I think it's great. It's just always nice to have new people around. It was a big meeting. We went through all of our books. We have a set of Big Red books that are for the meeting. So anyone that comes in without a book can use the book during the meeting because it's a book study. And we pick a topic and then we look at the index in the back of the book and read all the pages that are associated with that topic in the book. And we went through all of the meeting copies of the book in terms of handing them out. And I had just come with 3 new copies from the person in our intergroup who sources all the materials. So I had 3 new books that were intended for people to buy, but I ended up unwrapping all of them and handing them out during the meeting just so that everyone that was there had a book. So it was really cool. It's nice to have a big meeting sometimes. Our topic tonight was self-forgiveness, and it brought up a lot. Tonight was kind of an intense meeting for me, and I will talk about that in my share. I'm Steph, and this is my share. The affirmation for today is, on this day, I release all negative self-judgment of my identity as an adult child. I am filled with the hope that the promises of ACA offer me. A big part of me releasing the fear and shame that I have of being seen as an adult child is actually being honest about what's happened to me in my life. I share a lot about little T traumas. If you're familiar with pop psychology, you'll know that we talk about little T and big T traumas. Little T trauma is consistent things that have happened to you, like gaslighting, codependency, neglect, abuse. And then big T traumas are more single events, like a single event of violence or a rape or a car accident or a death. I talked about a big T trauma for the first time that I felt really sort of set me apart from your sort of run-of-the-mill, someone who had kind of a difficult life, to someone who really has experienced some tough stuff. When I shared the big T trauma for the first time in ACA, there were some gasps around the room. And it really kind of made me feel like, yeah, motherfuckers, because I think maybe I've presented myself as someone who just has had some rocky things going on, some family relationships that weren't ideal. And I'm just trying to self-actualize, and I'm here because I want to be the best version of myself, which is true. But I'm also here because I've been through some stuff. Some things that a lot of other people in this world, unfortunately, have been through and continue to go through. Watch any kind of Dateline episode and you'll probably see what I've experienced. But it's not something that I hear getting shared at our meetings. I haven't heard anybody share anything like that so far. I was worried as I was sharing, and it was very spontaneous. There was just a reading that I'm going to read for you guys from the Big Red Book that motivated me to share this. And it was called I Loved My Father. And my share was about my dad. I was happy with my share. It wasn't something I planned to do. It wasn't a way that I've told my story before. It just all kind of came out of me. And so much adrenaline built up as it was happening, as I was sharing. And even afterwards, as we continued the readings, as other people were sharing, it just was so hard to get all this adrenaline out of me. And I still don't feel like it's all gone. I think as I take my shower at night before I go to bed, like that's where I'm going to flush some of it out. I usually put music on, take a hot shower, get in bed, do my routine. My partner makes fun of me because if I do the whole routine, it takes like an hour. But I'm going to do like a short routine tonight, but I'm going to take a good shower and just feel proud of myself for saying something. And I called my partner after the meeting. He worked late, so he didn't come. And I told him what I said. And he was like, good, I'm proud of you for sharing that in there. So he's always really supportive. It's amazing. He's been through some similar things. Yeah, so that's all I'm really going to say about it. I probably will talk about it on here eventually, but it's something that I really have to work up to because there is that fear of putting myself out there and being seen as someone who's really damaged. And even with other people who are in there because they're damaged, I still don't want anyone to think that I'm damaged because we all want to be shiny pennies, but we can't always be shiny pennies. And sometimes we have to get dirty so I just opened the book. I'm going to share this reading from the Big Red Book. It's interesting because it's not actually on the page that is listed. It's the page before. But sometimes when a reading splits a page, we start on the page before it just to get the full context of what's going on. So this is an italicized reading, which means it's somebody's share who contributed it to the book. And it's called I Loved My Father. When I made my first 8th step list, I put my alcoholic father on the list, even though he had perpetrated violent and shaming abuse upon me as a child. At the time, I was in another program that told me to avoid looking at his behavior and to focus on mine. I did what I was told and made my amends to him in a letter. I never mailed the letter. When I worked the 8th step in ACA, it was a different story. I had discussion before I considered forgiving my father. I recalled how he once sat me on his knee when I was a child. He was cussing at my mom across the room. He was very drunk, and I could smell his 3-week-old whiskey breath. When drinking, my father would get very drunk and sit for hours cussing or picking fights with my mother, who tried to ignore him. On this night, my father sat me on his knee and pointed to my mother across the room and bellowed, "Son, your mother is a whore." It was a lie, but I can remember my mother looking away as my father made me agree with him. After that, I remember my mother's hugs felt different. I felt like a coward for the next 20 years. I thought I should have fought my dangerous dad. I met a counselor who walked me back through the episode 20 years later. The counselor asked me how much I weighed when this happened. I must have been 10 years old, so I weighed about 100 pounds. She then asked how much my drunken father weighed. He was 6 feet 5 inches and 230 pounds. I understood. I chose to forgive my father after I was able to get angry about what happened and talk about his sick behavior. I found out I really loved him deep down inside. I thought I didn't, but I did. I loved him, but I could never admit it because everyone knew he was a drunk. I forgave him to move him out of my head. I want to live in peace. I have also forgiven myself. I placed my name at the top of the 8th step in ACA. That's a really hard passage for me to read even the second time. I don't think I read it during the meeting, but I honestly don't even remember because it was just so intense. But even reading it again now is hard. It's a really intense passage, and I feel like I've heard or read a lot of the big passages in the book just from reading it myself and from going to so many meetings. But once in a while, we'll get to a page that I've never read, and it just knocks my socks off because some of these shares are so intense and so powerful. And that's an example of one. And just for anyone out there who's not familiar with step 8, which is referenced in the share, it is made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So there's a lot of discussion in the book about making amends because we're talking about making amends to people who have hurt us. You don't have to do it if it's someone who is a continuous threat to you. You don't have to do it at all. A lot of times we advise just writing a letter that you're not going to send like they did in this passage. In some situations, you can't ever have closure with someone because they're no longer alive. That is the case with both of my parents and all of my grandparents. So we have to find other ways to do it. We have to write letters. We have to have imagined conversations with them. We go to therapy. We do EMDR. We just honestly do our best. That's all I'm going to share about tonight because it's been such an intense evening. But I just want everyone to know that no matter what has happened to you, no matter what has qualified you to be an adult child, you are wonderful. You are loved. I would never look at anyone in any kind of way just for what they've been through. And there are people in this world, especially in our ACA meetings, who would never judge you, who would never pity you. Pity's almost worse than judgment with a lot of this stuff, and who would just smile at you and support you and continue to be on your side no matter what.